I'm happy to see my son. I thought I would never see him again.
An emotional reunion in Winnipeg, 5 decades in the making.
We've got a commitment that we will increase Indigenous employment.
An Indigenous-owned airline inks a new deal with hundreds of millions of dollars.
A very heartfelt experience to feel like I'm coming home.
And a First Nation musician steps out of their comfort zone and onto a different kind of stage. Tansin itutemak, tiar wheatly nisigasun, opasqueak oche. Tawau, welcome to APTN National News. It began with a simple ancestry test and ended with an emotional reunion this week. After 5 decades away from Manitoba, Jonathan Hooker, a 60s scoop survivor, has come home. Kyler Minshall starts us off with that story tonight.
Jonathan Hooker was only 18 months old when, against his family's will, he was taken by the federal government from his home community of Moose Lake and given up to a New Zealand couple for adoption. Hooker spent the majority of his life unaware of his Indigenous heritage, and it wasn't until his mother-in-law gifted him a DNA kit that he learned the truth. Through Facebook, he was able to get in contact with his half-sister, another scoop survivor living in Texas, and was able to meet her and an uncle there in November of 2024. This Wednesday, Hooker arrived at the Winnipeg International Airport, returning to Manitoba for the first time since 1975 to reunite with his long-lost birth mother, Patsy George.
I'm happy to see my son. I thought I would never see him again. He was only 2 months old when they took him away from me. And my other daughter, a month old. I don't know what they were doing. But I'm happy to see him.
Hooker is just one of the thousands of Indigenous children taken by the federal government between the 1960s and 80s and adopted into predominantly white families in an effort to erase their cultural heritage and assimilate them into Western society. He says that he's excited to learn more about his history and culture. He will be spending his trip visiting family in Winnipeg, Birch River, and his home community of Moose Lake, and he hopes that more scoop survivors will try to reconnect with their heritage.
I hope somebody gets some inspiration out of this. I hope someone sort of hears some of my story or comes and talks to me or anything, and we can maybe get some advice.
Throughout this process, Jonathan has been supported by fellow scoop survivor and advocate Colleen Rajat. She says she is happy for Jonathan, but thinks that there should be a permanent repatriation program set up to help 60 scoop survivors in different countries return home. Kyler Minshall, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Kinanaskamitin Kyler. An Indigenous-owned airline has signed a landmark agreement worth nearly $500 million. The deal will see Rise Air provide workforce transportation services for 2 uranium companies in northern Saskatchewan. Video journalist Rachel May was at the event and has the details.
So it's a big step change in technology, and that's going to have a big impact for us on our reliability of our services.
Rise Air CEO Derek Neese says a new 15-year agreement with Cameco and Areno will allow them to expand their fleet and invest in employees. The nearly $500 million deal will also fund Indigenous pilot and airline mechanic programs, while adding 3 brand new planes straight from the factory in France.
These aircraft are much more efficient for us because we can carry on one aircraft 68 passengers, whereas in the past we could only carry 44 passengers on the current aircraft.
Rise Air is 100% Indigenous owned, with Athabasca Basin Development, Prince Albert Development Corp., and 12 First Nations in the province as shareholders. The company also offers a fully funded Indigenous pilot training program to help candidates from northern Saskatchewan become professional pilots. benefits. Nice says partnerships with companies like Cameco and Areno are vital to creating job opportunities for Indigenous people in their own communities.
We want to have a workforce that lives in Saskatchewan, comes from Saskatchewan, is invested in Saskatchewan. And because we are Indigenous owned and because we are flying into those northern communities, we've got a commitment that we will increase Indigenous employment.
One of Rise Air's shareholder communities is Black Lake First Nation. Chief Corrine Saizi says she is pleased to see the province's only northern airline expanding to create more opportunities.
So it is an honor, and I am proud of the companies for coming together and making more employment for our communities to take people to the mine sites for work. So it is a proud moment today.
Dylan Bringleson, Vice President of Supply Chain Management at Cameco, says they are proud to continue exploring business development, community engagement, and employment with northern communities.
But the heart of our company is going to be always with the communities and the people in northern Saskatchewan, trying to find these opportunities.
Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Chiefs in Manitoba, along with the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation, are mourning the loss of former Chief Jim Bear. The Southern Chiefs organization made the announcement today. They said Chief Bear left a remarkable warrior's impact and influence in First Nations in Manitoba. He was recognized as a chief, a leader in business, and a steadfast advocate for Indigenous people. On April 30th this year, Treaty 1 Chiefs presented a Lifetime Achievement Award to Chief Bear. He was a residential school survivor and a longtime leader of Broken Head Ojibwe Nation. His legacy also includes co-founding the Southeast Resource Development Council, helping to establish the South Beach Casino, and he contributed to the historic repatriation of Nawe Odina Project in Winnipeg. Chief Bear was also previously awarded the Queen's Jubilee Medal. In a statement, Manitoba Families Minister Nahani Fontaine said Chief Jim Bear was a kind, generous, and dedicated leader. I always appreciated listening to his wise words. Manitoba is a better place because of Elder Bear. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs also said Chief Bear dedicated his life to advancing the rights and sovereignty of First Nations. His leadership, vision, and commitment to nationhood left a lasting impact not only on his community, but across Manitoba and beyond. From all of us at APTN, sincerest condolences to Chief Bear's family and community. Before we head to the break, here's Yellowknife video journalist Bruce Dela Cruz to tell us about his ongoing coverage from the Innovation Empowering Spirit Conference.
Hi there. I'm here on the third and final day of the Empowering Innovation Spirit Conference. Stay tuned for our coverage as today's panelists talked about AI, indigeneity, and reimagining financial systems that honor Indigenous culture and values. Stay tuned for that coverage coming soon to APTN National News.
Pitigwe. The impacts of drugs, alcohol, and violence in our communities are often in the news. Next week at the Assembly of First Nations, a resolution is coming forward that calls for a First Nations-wide state of emergency that's in relation to the fentanyl, opioid, drug, alcohol, and bootlegging crisis, currently devastating First Nations families and communities across Canada. That's the topic for this week's Truth in Politics panel. Jennifer Leowitz is the CEO of Pasqua Strategies, and helping us out this week is lawyer Leah Ballantyne. Leah, a resolution is coming to the AFN Assembly next week that calls for a First Nations-wide state of emergency in relation to the drugs, alcohol, and bootlegging crisis currently devastating First Nations families and communities across Canada. Is this a declaration that's needed?
Oh, absolutely. The toxic drug crisis is directly connected to colonization and all the harms that our people historically and currently are experiencing. And I would say that out in British Columbia, the First Nations Health Authority has done some really good research on why the toxic drug crisis has reached the magnitude it has, and provides statistics on how many First Nations people are involved with that, and statistics such as death and life expectancy. And really what is proposed, and also in the resolution by Chief Angela Levasseur that'll be read on the floor next week at the AFN Assembly, is about asking the government or compelling the government to provide resources, wraparound care for First Nations who are in crisis. And the symptom of this crisis is the toxic drugs and the use. And so what is proposed is wraparound services of long-term sustainable funding for meeting harm reduction, and also providing people with mental health and wellness tools and resources so that these needs can be met on the community level where it's needed most.
Absolutely, and we're starting to see more of these stories on social media as well. Jennifer, we see a lot of those stories, like I just said, about the violence and the addiction that is plaguing some nations. Exactly how bad is it?
I have a little bit more of, I guess, a negative outlook on it. Having lost a sibling to addiction, which I've been very open about, it feels as though, the addiction takes course. In some cases, in a lot of cases, the lives are lost, and we're becoming so desensitized to the lives that are lost from addiction that I feel like it's been a long time coming to even bring this forward, to declare it a national crisis, because it is a crisis. It's been a crisis in a lot of our families. I've been very close to addiction my entire life, and I think it's time that we don't just talk about it, but we actually address it head on. We fund these services well. We bring wraparound supports in every part of this country. But we also have to remember that even as Indigenous people, we have our own systems and our own ways of knowing, but we're dealing with drugs that are manufactured and they're synthetic. So we have to bring in that, westernized and Eurocentric science in detox and in some of these areas to, medically intervene to bring people off of these drugs safely, but also to give them that long-term support to make sure that the recovery is as successful as possible. But then we also need to be addressing the root cause of crime, the root cause of addiction, the breakdown of family, the child welfare system, all of these things that have detrimentally impacted our people. It's time to also start addressing those issues head on. And I think the federal government has a direct responsibility to act. And I think they also need to work very closely with our provinces to make sure that beds are available, treatment options are there, and we are putting in as low barrier access to services as possible. Shelters, everything. Everyone from city council, MLAs, MPs have a direct responsibility to make sure that they're not just addressing this crisis and putting forward options, but they are making sure that they are doing it with the most information available possible so that these things are successful in the long term.
Those are some interesting points to bring up, because you are right when it comes to the desensitization that we do have. Leah, a growing number of First Nations have been taking matters into their own hands, banishing people, taking away houses, known for illegal drug activity. Is this the way to handle this crisis?
In my opinion, no. Part of the reason why I would say that is because there needs to be some form of intervention with other justice services. So you would need the assistance until we're able to have our own policing services and even our own tribunal courts or tribunals to address people who might be selling drugs or bringing them into the community, and then to the users. And I think those need to be kind of parsed out, because the users need help through a healing journey. But the people who might be bringing those drugs into the community need to go through a judicial or some kind of justice process. Before that, a chief and council can come in and say that they're going to use a BCR to remove people from their communities, because it's a bit of a slippery slope. I understand most First Nations want to make sure that their community members are safe, but it's a double-edged sword where without a proper check and balance in place, the chief and council may be playing judge and jury and police officer on people who may have not been charged with any crime related to the toxic drug crisis.
Absolutely. And Jennifer, finally, I'll get you to weigh in as well. How do you feel about some of the actions First Nations have been taking? Is this the way to handle what's happening?
I think it's my hot take is that it's really unfortunate that we even have to have this conversation, because all of these systems are essentially by design, and our governance systems have been so incredibly hard to deal with that it gets to this point. And now, as First Nations people, we're trying to navigate these really complex situations that we never asked for. But then it makes things difficult, because these chief and councils are tasked with keeping our community safe and our people safe. But also, when you lock someone out or push them away from their collective belonging and their sense of community, the outcome of that is not a good thing. And I think about people that might be struggling or are close to maybe being ready to accept that help and to go onto their healing journey. And, maybe they're days away or maybe they're weeks away, but it doesn't matter, because now they've been shut out of community. And what does that look like when they have to turn to the streets? And that, goes back to, again, break down a family and even break down a community. That's how people get into gangs and get into trouble and that sort of thing. So I don't love it, but I don't know the right answer either when you're tasked with keeping people safe.
Yeah, it's difficult, especially with the both of you also being a part of the community. You can't just walk away from it. So I just want to thank you both today for taking part in this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just have to point out that all three of us are Cree women and maybe brag a little. And we want to hear what you think. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send us an email with your comments or story ideas to news@aptn.ca, or head over to aptnnews.ca to read and watch our stories. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Don't forget to follow us. A musical about car troubles and res gas, who would have thought? We'll tell you more about it right after the break. Chaskwa. Tawau, welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Dorothy Ratch captured this stunning photo of the Lundbrick Falls located in southwestern Alberta. Thanks for sharing, Dorothy. It looks like it was a beautiful day. Now for the chance to be our next photo of the day, send your photos to share at aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, Charlottetown 21, Halifax 18. Inukjuak 10, Nain 15. Quebec City 17, Val-d'Or 11. Sault Ste. Marie 18, Peterborough 17. Big Trout Lake 19, Wawa 16. Thompson 30, God's Lake 28. Dauphin 31, Winnipeg 32. North Battleford 32, Regina 24. Uranium City 26, La Ronge 27. Fort McMurray 30, Peace River 32. Red Deer 32, Calgary 30. Kamloops 31, Vancouver 23. Dease Lake 23, Smithers 29. Rock River 24, Dawson 23. Norman Wells 28, Fort Simpson 31. Tuktoyaktuk 12, Colville Lake 25. Cambridge Bay 6, Chesterfield 14. Clyde River 5, Iqaluit 9 degrees. A First Nation musician has just found a new niche in the theatre industry. His first musical production, called Res Gas, kicked off in Port Hope, Ontario, and tickets are selling fast. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
The covers and hold me tight. Wish with me for
Kel Crow is confident anytime he has a guitar in his hand. He's been on the music scene entertaining audiences for the past 15 years. He jumped out of his comfort zone after being asked to participate in a theater project 3 years ago.
Kind of insane, actually. When I started this project, I thought that the whole process was going to be done and over with in a year with a reading here in the theater. And when it was over, I remember thinking like, wow, that was a really great time of my life, like time to move on, and what a great experience. And then, a week later, I got the call that we were going to do it for real. And I was like, oh, all right.
He's thankful for the push and the support of co-worker Genevieve Adam.
I was sort of the one kind of just staring off into space, having ideas, and Genevieve was the one sort of, I've said this before, but catching them in a butterfly net kind of thing and turning them into something, tangible and real.
Res Gas is now on stage at the Capitol Theatre. The lead character is Destin, who left his reserve in search of something better. He unexpectedly ends up back there after having car trouble. It all plays out at the Wide Wigwam Diner. Destin is played by John Walmsley. It's been 10 years since he has done musical theatre. He says the production bridges many gaps.
A very heartfelt experience to feel like I'm coming home. I feel like there's a part of me that is being, I don't know, it's just a part of me that feels like it was missing, and now it's kind of creating this whole picture for me.
Crow says some of the inspiration came from his own experience.
A lot of it came from within, I think. Like our main character goes through a lot of the emotions that I felt when I moved back to Alderville, for sure, especially doing what I do and relative to people's perception of what it is to be a musician and to make it, as it were. So I think, yeah, some of it's going to be autobiographical for people that know me, and some of it's going to feel new, or like maybe they didn't know me as well as they thought they did.
The musical crosses a few genres in music, including rock, hip-hop, and of course there's comedy.
We have really funny humor. We have really intense moments of emotion. We have moments of anger and hope and all of these different things. And I wanted it to be a piece where you know, we can say as much as we want about the overall culture, but we wanted it to be coming from a very personal, you know, moment in this sort of like slice of life for these characters. And I think that we've achieved that and then some.
According to Crow, tickets are selling fast. Res Gas runs until September 7th. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Port Hope, Ontario.
I wonder if they'll let me be a part of that musical. And that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. Just one more sleep and September long weekend is here. Where did the summer go? I'm TR Wheatley. It's been a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Creason is back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. From all of us at APTN, Egasi, Gitam, Kawapamitinanaw.